The petition. Ambassador Kieran Voss stood in the crystalline antechamber, his reflection scattered across 1,000 facets of alien architecture. Beyond the massive doors lay the Grand Assembly Hall, where 17 species had gathered to decide humanity's fate. "They're ready for you," chirped Zelthi, a moth-like creature serving as the council's herald. Her wings shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that humans had learned meant nervousness. Kieran straightened his uniform and clutched the data tablet containing Earth's petition. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. 3 years since the Vorium traders had made first contact over Jupiter's moons. 3 years since humanity learned they were cosmically alone no longer. The doors spiraled open like a blooming flower made of liquid metal. The Grand Assembly Hall stretched before him like a cathedral built by mathematics itself. Floating platforms held the council members, each from worlds Kieran had only seen in briefings. At the center sat High Arbiter Zorvan, a being whose species, the Talgrix, had founded the Interstellar Empire 4,000 years ago when Earth was still discovering bronze. "Human representative," Zorvan's voice resonated through translation fields, "you stand before the oldest civilization compact in this arm of the galaxy. Speak your petition." Kieran walked to the central platform, which rose to meet him. His heart hammered but his voice stayed steady. "Honored members of the Galactic Council, I come representing the people of Earth with a formal request for membership in the Interstellar Empire." He activated his tablet, and holographic data bloomed around the chamber. "Humanity has achieved faster-than-light capability. We have established peaceful relations with the Vorium Collective. We have demonstrated our technological advancement and our commitment to peaceful cooperation." A sharp clicking sound echoed from the left platform. Ambassador Threekes, a crustacean being encased in a containment suit filled with ammonia, spoke through harsh synthetic tones. "Technological advancement?" The humans discovered FTL travel by accident during a mining operation. They stumbled into the cosmic community like children wandering into traffic. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Kieran felt heat rise to his cheeks but maintained his composure. "It's true our FTL discovery was unplanned," Kieran admitted. "But humanity has always learned from happy accidents. Penicillin, microwave ovens, vulcanized rubber. We take what fortune gives us and build something better." "A charming philosophy," purred Ambassador Silthera, a feline being whose species prided themselves on strategic thinking. "But the Empire requires more than charm and luck. Tell us, human Kieran, why should we accept your violent, divided species into our union?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Kieran had prepared for this. Every briefing, every simulation had warned him that humanity's bloody history would be thrown in his face. He looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien eyes as he could. "Because we learned," he said simply. "Yes, our history is soaked in blood. We've fought wars over resources, ideology, and things as trivial as skin color. But we also did something remarkable. We stopped. Not because someone forced us, but because we chose to be better. When we reached for the stars, we did it together. Every nation on Earth contributed to our FTL program. Every human alive voted in favor of seeking contact with galactic civilization." "Pretty words," Threekes clicked dismissively. "The Kravik said similar things 5 centuries ago. Within a decade of joining the Empire, they attempted to conquer 3 neighboring systems." "The humans are not Kravik," Zorvan interrupted, his ancient eyes studying Kieran with unsettling intensity. "Though the concern is noted. Human Kieran, your petition will be reviewed. The Council will debate. You will be summoned when we have reached a decision." The platform began lowering Kieran back to the floor. "High Arbiter," Kieran called out, halting his descent. "If I may ask, how long will deliberations take? For some petitions, minutes. For others, years." Zorvan's expression was unreadable. "Your species is an unknown variable. We must be certain." As Kieran left the chamber, Zelthi fluttered beside him. "That went better than most," she offered kindly. "Did it? You're still alive. That's a good start." The opposition. Council chambers hummed with heated discussion the moment Kieran departed. Zorvan watched the human go, then turned to face his peers. "Deliberations are open," he announced. Threekes immediately surged forward on his platform. "This is absurdity given form. The humans have been spacefaring for barely 3 years. 3 years. Some species in this chamber have had interstellar civilizations for millennia before they petitioned for membership. The Vorium were spacefaring for only 8 years before we accepted them," countered Ambassador Drellix, a gaseous being whose thoughts appeared as colored light within his containment sphere. "Technological development speed is not our primary criterion. The Vorium were unified, Threekis shot back. The humans still have separate governmental bodies. Nation-states they call them. How can we trust a species that hasn't even united its own homeworld? Silthera's tail flicked thoughtfully. An interesting point. Yet their voting record suggests surprising unity for such a fractured species. 15 billion individuals, all in agreement about joining the Empire? That speaks to either remarkable consensus or remarkable coercion. It's consensus, Zorvan said quietly. Everyone turned to him. I've studied their broadcasts, their cultural exports, their internal communications. Humanity is genuinely united in this ambition. For the first time in their history, they see themselves as one people. Then they're naive, Ambassador Kresh rumbled. The mineral-based being shifted, his body's crystalline structure refracting light into rainbow patterns. They see the Empire as some grand adventure. They don't understand the responsibilities, the compromises, the sacrifices required. Every young species thinks that way, Ambassador Fira noted. The aquatic delegate's voice bubbled through translation fields. We were no different. The question isn't whether they're ready by their own estimation, but whether they'll survive the reality of galactic politics. Survive? Threekis clicked. I'm more concerned about whether we'll survive them. Have any of you reviewed their military history? They've fought wars continuously for their entire recorded civilization. Millions dead in conflicts called world wars. Weapons capable of sterilizing their own planet? They're a threat waiting to happen. Or a powerful ally, Drelix's colors shifted to contemplative blue. Their capacity for warfare could be redirected toward defending the Empire. The Kreshner incursions continue at our borders. Perhaps warrior instincts would serve us well. The last thing we need is to militarize the Empire further, Silthera objected. We maintain peace through diplomacy and mutual benefit, not through arms races. Zorvan raised a hand and silence fell. We're circling the core question. Let me pose it directly. Are humans fundamentally compatible with the Empire's values? The chamber fell quiet. They practice concepts that align with our principles, Fira offered. Justice, equality, cooperation. Imperfectly, yes, but they're trying. They also practice tribalism, xenophobia, and exploitation, Threekis countered. Don't let one eloquent ambassador fool you. I've monitored their information networks. Hate and division run deep in human society. As it does in every society, Kresh rumbled. Even ours. We've had 4,000 years to refine our civilization. They've had barely 4,000 years of written history. Context matters. Ambassador Yelrix finally spoke. The elderly Talgrix had been silent until now, her scaled face thoughtful. I propose we test them. All eyes turned to her. Explain, Zorvan prompted. Membership in the Empire grants access to technologies, trade routes and knowledge that could advance humanity by centuries, Yelrix said slowly. But it also exposes them to dangers they cannot yet imagine. Before we decide, let's see how they handle a taste of what awaits them. What do you suggest? Silthera asked, whiskers twitching with interest. There's a situation developing in the Kashar sector, Yelrix continued. The mining colony on Outpost Viridian is experiencing labor disputes. Nothing dangerous, but it requires diplomatic finesse. Send the human. Let him mediate. See if his species' vaunted unity extends beyond their own kind. Threekis' eye stalk swiveled skeptically. You want to base our decision on one diplomatic mission? Not entirely, Yelrix replied. But it will tell us whether humans can handle complexity beyond their own planetary concerns. If Kiran Voss succeeds, it suggests humanity might adapt to galactic civilization. If he fails, we have our answer, Zorvan finished. He looked around the chamber. A test is reasonable. All in favor? 13 platforms glowed with approval. 4 remained dark. The motion passes, Zorvan declared. We'll send word to the human. Ambassador Yelrix, you'll brief him on the situation. Ensure he understands this is both an opportunity and an evaluation. As the council adjourned, Silthera moved her platform beside Yelrix's. That was clever. But do you actually think he'll succeed? Yelrix's ancient eyes gleamed. I think we're about to learn something fascinating about humanity one way or another. The Vorium weren't simply being oversensitive. The Kresh supervisors had indeed modified safety protocols, but not out of callousness. They'd implemented procedures that worked perfectly for mineral-based beings but created genuine hazards for organic species. Meanwhile, the Drelix weren't threatening to leave because of the conflict itself. They were gaseous beings who found the emotional intensity of the dispute physically uncomfortable. The anger and tension literally made their environment toxic. By the time Kieran gathered all three parties in a conference room, he had the beginning of an idea. "I've reviewed everything," he announced. "And I think you're all right." Silence. Chithrex's antennae twitched in confusion. "Explain." "The Kresh aren't ignoring safety. They're applying their understanding of safety, which is perfectly valid for their biology. The Vorium aren't being oversensitive. They're responding to genuine dangers which are perfectly real for their biology. And the Drellics aren't abandoning their responsibilities. They're being affected by environmental factors neither of you considered." "Then what do you propose?" Mordrelex asked, his crystalline body refracting the room's lights. "We stop trying to find one solution that works for everyone," Kieran said. "Because you're not everyone. You're three different species with three different needs. So we create three different protocols." He pulled up the operational schematics. The extraction shafts get divided into zones. Kresh work the deep cores where temperatures and pressures are highest. Your people excel there anyway. Vorium handle the mid-level operations where the conditions suit your biology. Drellics maintain atmospheric systems from remote stations where emotional intensity doesn't concentrate. Segregation. Chithrex sounded offended. "You're proposing we separate based on species?" "I'm proposing you work in environments suited to your strengths," Kieran corrected. "You're already separate. You breathe different atmospheres, tolerate different pressures, perceive different spectrums. Pretending you're all the same doesn't make you equal. Acknowledging your differences and building systems that respect them does." The three beings exchanged glances, their alien expressions unreadable to Kieran. "This would require restructuring the entire operation," Mordrelex noted. "It would require 3 days of reorganization," Kieran countered. "I've already run the projections. Productivity would increase by 20% because everyone works in optimal conditions. Safety incidents would drop to near zero. And the Drellics could return to comfortable atmospheric maintenance." Chithrex leaned forward. "You worked all this out in 3 hours?" "I had good data and strong motivation," Kieran said dryly. "So what do you think? Can we make this work?" The three aliens conferred in a rapid exchange of sounds, resonances, and color shifts that Kieran's translator struggled to follow. Finally, Chithrex turned back to him. "The human's proposal has merit. We'll implement it on a trial basis." Relief flooded through Kieran, but he kept his expression professional. "I'll write up the formal documentation and send it to the council." As the meeting adjourned, Mordrelex approached Kieran alone. "A question, human. Why didn't you try to make us compromise toward some middle solution? Most mediators would have." Kieran considered his answer carefully. "Because I've learned something about my own species. For most of our history we tried to make everyone the same. Same laws, same languages, same beliefs. It caused nothing but suffering. We only found peace when we accepted that different doesn't mean wrong. It just means different." The Kresh being's crystalline structure pulsed with what might have been respect. "Perhaps your species has learned something valuable after all." The test. Kieran had been in his assigned quarters for only 4 hours when the summons came. He'd barely had time to process the council meeting, let alone prepare for whatever came next. Zelthi escorted him to a smaller conference room where Ambassador Yelrix waited. The Taugrix woman gestured to a seat with one clawed hand. "Comfortable?" she asked. "Not particularly," Kieran admitted. "I assume this isn't a social call." "Perceptive." Yelrix's scaled lips curved in what might have been a smile. "The council has decided to test humanity before rendering a final decision on your petition." Kieran's stomach dropped but he kept his expression neutral. "What kind of test?" Yelrix activated a holographic display. A star system materialized between them, focusing on a small moon orbiting a gas giant. "Outpost Viridian," she explained. "A mining colony extracting rare isotopes from the moon's core. The operation is jointly managed by 3 species: Vorium, Drellics, and Kresh. 3 months ago, productivity dropped by 40%. 2 months ago, the Vorium workers filed a grievance about working conditions. Last month, the Kresh supervisors threatened to shut down the operation entirely. And you want me to mediate?" "We want to see if you can," Yelrix corrected. "This is a relatively minor dispute in the grand scheme of the Empire. Nothing compared to the challenges you'd face as a member species. But it will show us whether humans can navigate conflicts between multiple alien cultures with different values, needs, and communication styles." Kieran studied the display. "What are the specific grievances?" "The Vorium claim the Kresh are ignoring safety protocols to maximize extraction rates. The Kresh claim the Vorium are being oversensitive and that mineral-based beings like themselves have different safety tolerances. The delegates are threatening to pull out entirely because the conflict is affecting the atmospheric processors they maintain. Wonderful, Kieran muttered. When do I leave? Immediately. A transport is waiting. Yelrix fixed him with an intense stare. Understand this, human Kieran. If you fail, your petition will likely be denied. The Council will interpret failure as evidence that humanity isn't ready for galactic civilization. And if I succeed? Then we continue deliberations. Success doesn't guarantee acceptance, but failure guarantees rejection. Kieran stood. No pressure then. Actually, Yelrix said as he reached the door, enormous pressure. That's rather the point. The transport to Outpost Viridian took 6 hours. Kieran spent the time reviewing everything he could find about Vorium, Kresh, and Drelix cultures. The information was overwhelming. Different environmental needs, different social structures, different fundamental assumptions about how the universe worked. His briefing materials on Vorium culture alone mentioned 17 different gesture systems depending on context and caste. The Kresh communicated partially through mineral resonance that humans couldn't even perceive without technical assistance. And the Drelix thought in four-dimensional mathematical concepts that made Kieran's head hurt. How was he supposed to mediate between beings so fundamentally different from each other and from him? The outpost appeared through the viewport, a cluster of interconnected habitats clinging to the moon's gray surface. Mining shafts extended down like dark veins. In the distance, massive extraction machinery moved with surprising grace. Kieran was met at the airlock by 3 beings who regarded him with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright hostility. You're the mediator? The Vorium, whose name translated as Chithrex, clicked his mandibles dismissively. You're barely out of your own atmosphere and they send you to solve our problems? I didn't ask for this job, Kieran replied evenly. But I'm here. So we can either work together to find a solution, or we can stand here insulting each other's species until someone makes a decision for us. The Kresh, a being named Mordrelex, rumbled with what the translator called amused approval. The human has spine at least. Come. We'll show you the operation. The next 3 hours were a crash course in interstellar mining operations. Kieran toured the extraction sites, reviewed safety reports, and interviewed workers from all 3 species. What emerged was a picture far more complex than Yelrix's briefing suggested. The report. Ambassador Yelrix read Kieran's mission report 3 times, searching for the manipulation she was certain must be there. No mediator solved disputes this cleanly, especially not on their first interstellar assignment. But the data was undeniable. Outpost Viridian's productivity had increased exactly as Kieran predicted. Safety incidents had dropped to 0. The Drelix had filed a formal commendation. Even Chithrex, who had initially opposed the humans' involvement, praised the solution's elegance. She brought the report to Zorvan's private chambers. The High Arbiter read it in silence, his ancient face betraying nothing. When he finished, he set the data tablet down with deliberate care. What's your assessment? He asked. Either we underestimated humanity significantly, Yelrix replied, or Kieran Voss is an exceptional outlier among his species. Which do you believe? Yelrix moved to the chamber's window, which overlooked the sprawling capital city of the Empire's central world. Millions of beings from hundreds of species lived and worked together down there. It had taken centuries to build this civilization. I reviewed humanity's application more thoroughly after sending Kieran to Viridian, she said. Do you know what I found? Their planet has over 7,000 distinct languages. Hundreds of different cultures. They've existed as a unified species for barely 50 years, yet they've maintained that unity despite more diversity than some multi-species alliances manage. Impressive, Zorvan acknowledged. But diversity isn't the same as cooperation. No, Yelrix agreed. But here's what struck me. Every major human advancement in the last century came from diverse teams. Their FTL drive? Designed by scientists from 12 different nations. Their application to the Empire? Written by representatives from every continental region. Kieran's own background shows he spent a decade in what they call the diplomatic corps, specifically mediating between different human factions. You're saying he's not an outlier. I'm saying his approach at Viridian wasn't exceptional by human standards. It was textbook human diplomacy. They've spent the last several generations learning how to make diversity work because their survival depended on it. Zorvan stood, his movement graceful despite his age. Then why do I sense hesitation in your voice? Yelrix turned from the window. Because being good at internal diversity doesn't guarantee success at galactic scales. The challenges humanity faces within their own species are nothing compared to what the Empire deals with. We're not just different cultures, Zorvan. We're different biochemistries, different cognitive architectures, different fundamental experiences of reality. The Viridian solution suggests they understand that. One solution to one problem, Yelrix cautioned. I want to believe humanity is ready. But accepting them into the Empire isn't just about their capabilities. It's about whether they can handle the weight of 4,000 years of history, tradition, and responsibility. A chime interrupted them. Zorvan activated the communication panel. High Arbiter, Threekes' harsh voice crackled through. Emergency council session. Immediately. What's happened? Zorvan demanded. The Kreshner. They've attacked a convoy near the border of Sector 9. 3 ships destroyed, 200 beings dead. And they're demanding territory concessions or they'll escalate further. Yelrix felt cold certainty settle in her chest. The Kreshner were a militant species that rejected the Empire's authority, periodically launching raids to test their defenses. This was the largest attack in a decade. Assemble the council, Zorvan ordered. And inform Ambassador Voss. If humanity wants to join the Empire, they should see what that actually means. 30 minutes later, the Grand Assembly Hall buzzed with tension. Kieran stood at the edge of the chamber watching council members argue over response strategies. We must retaliate, Kresh thundered. Show the Kreshner that attacking the Empire has consequences. Military action will only escalate the conflict, Silthera countered. We should pursue diplomatic channels. They've rejected every diplomatic overture for a century. Threekes clicked angrily. At what point do we accept that some beings only understand force? Kieran listened to the debate spiral. He noticed something interesting. Despite their different positions, no one was questioning whether to respond. They were united in believing action was necessary. They just disagreed on what form that action should take. High Arbiter, he spoke up. All attention turned to him. May I ask a question? Zorvan gestured permission. What do the Kreshner actually want? Not what they're demanding, but what do they truly need? Territory, Kresh answered immediately. Their population is expanding faster than their resources. Then why not give them access to uninhabited systems? Kieran asked. The Empire controls thousands of systems. Surely some could be shared without compromising security. The principle matters, Threekes objected. If we appear weak, others will exploit it. Is it weakness to acknowledge someone else's needs? Kieran pressed. Or is it strength to find solutions that serve everyone's interests? The human makes a naive assumption, Silthera said, though her tone wasn't unkind. That the Kreshner will negotiate in good faith. They see any concession as confirmation they can take what they want through violence. Maybe, Kieran acknowledged. But has anyone tried responding to their actual needs rather than their demands? Because from what I'm hearing, the Empire's been in a stalemate with them for a century. Whatever approach you're using clearly isn't working. Silence fell across the chamber. Explain what you propose, Zorvan said quietly. Kieran took a breath. He was way out of his depth, but something about this situation felt familiar. It reminded him of corporate negotiations, labor disputes, territorial conflicts between human factions. The Kreshner attack when they feel pressured by resource scarcity. Their demands are aggressive because they're desperate, but they frame it as strength. Classic negotiation posturing. So stop negotiating with their posturing and start addressing their actual problem. By giving them what they want? Threekes scoffed. By giving them what they need, Kieran corrected. There's a difference. They want territory to prove their power. They need resources to support their population. Those aren't the same thing. Offer them joint development rights to uninhabited systems under Empire supervision. They get the resources they need, maintain their dignity by forcing the concession through their attack, and the Empire gains a partner rather than maintaining an enemy. That's. Fira's colors shifted through several patterns. Actually potentially viable. It's rewarding aggression, Threekes objected. It's ending a century-long conflict, Drelix countered. The cost of maintaining our defensive posture against the Kreshner far exceeds what we'd spend on joint development programs. From a purely economic standpoint, the human suggestion has merit. Zorvan raised his hand. This requires further discussion, but Ambassador Voss's perspective is noted. Council will reconvene in 4 hours to vote on a response. As the assembly dispersed, Yelrix approached Kieran. That was either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, Kieran admitted. Did I overstep? Significantly. You're not a member of the Empire. You have no authority to propose policy. Yelrix's scaled face showed amusement. But you also demonstrated exactly the kind of thinking that made you successful at Viridian. You looked past the surface conflict to the underlying need. Will they listen? Some will. Whether enough will remains to be seen. She paused. The Council's deliberations about your petition resume tomorrow. Tonight's events will factor heavily into that decision. Kieran watched her leave, then turned to stare out at the sprawling alien city beyond the windows. Somewhere down there, humans might eventually walk as equals among the star's countless species. If he hadn't just destroyed humanity's chances with his unsolicited advice. The decision. The Council reconvened in the smaller strategic chamber rather than the Grand Assembly Hall. Kieran wasn't present, which bothered him more than he wanted to admit. His fate, humanity's fate, was being decided in a room he couldn't enter. Zelthi found him pacing the gardens outside, his nervous energy scaring away several small alien creatures that had been grazing on crystalline flowers. You're going to wear a hole in the pathway, she observed, her wings reflecting his agitation with dark purple patterns. How long do these deliberations usually take? Depends. The Vorium took 3 days. The Fira took 6 months. 6 months? They're aquatic beings. Everything they do takes longer. Zelthi landed on a nearby branch. The scouts say the council is split. Kieran stopped pacing. You have scouts. Everyone has scouts. Politics is politics, whether you're on Earth or at the center of the Empire. Her antennae twitched with what Kieran had learned meant mischief. Approximately half the council thinks you demonstrated valuable perspective last night. The other half thinks you demonstrated dangerous naivety. Which half is winning? That's the interesting part. Neither. They're arguing about what your perspective means for humanity as a whole. Inside the strategic chamber, that argument was reaching its crescendo. The human suggestion about the Kreshner was tactically sound but strategically dangerous, Threekes insisted. He proposed appeasement without understanding the historical context. That's exactly the kind of thinking that could destabilize the Empire. Or evolve it, Yelrix countered. For a century we've maintained the same approach to the Kreshner conflict. It's cost us resources, lives, and political capital. Kieran offered a fresh perspective precisely because he isn't bound by our historical context. Fresh perspectives are only valuable if they're informed, Silthera noted. The human demonstrated creativity, certainly. But creativity without wisdom is just chaos. Zorvan had been silent, letting the council debate. Now he spoke, his ancient voice cutting through the argument. Let me pose a different question. Setting aside whether Kieran's specific suggestions are wise, what does his approach tell us about humanity's potential role in the Empire? That they'll constantly challenge established protocols, Kresh rumbled. Which could be either revitalizing or destructive. Both probably, Drelix's colors shifted to thoughtful amber. But consider this. The Empire has existed for 4 millennia. We've accumulated tremendous wisdom, but we've also accumulated tremendous inertia. Perhaps we need a species that hasn't learned to think like us yet. That's romanticism, not strategy, Threekes objected. Is it? Fira's bubbling voice carried an edge. When was the last time the Council solved a problem in a genuinely novel way? We're sophisticated, yes. We're wise, certainly. But are we still innovative? Uncomfortable silence answered her question. The humans are innovative by necessity, Yelrix said quietly. They've existed as a unified species for barely 50 years. They haven't had time to calcify into rigid thinking. That's simultaneously their greatest weakness and their greatest strength. So we're considering accepting them specifically because they're underdeveloped? Silthera's tail lashed skeptically. We're considering accepting them because they bring something the Empire lacks, Zorvan said. The question is whether that something outweighs the risks. Ambassador Varix, who had been silent throughout the deliberations, finally spoke. The energy-based being's voice crackled with intensity. I've been reviewing humanity's cultural databases. Their art, their literature, their philosophical traditions. Do you know what theme appears constantly? Transformation. They tell stories about individuals and societies fundamentally changing, growing beyond their limitations. It's central to how they understand existence. Many species have transformation myths, Threekes noted dismissively. But how many species live them? Varix countered. Humanity has transformed itself radically every few centuries. From tribal groups to city-states to nations to a unified global civilization. Each transformation was traumatic, costly, sometimes catastrophic. But they keep doing it. They keep choosing growth over stability. That sounds exhausting, Kresh muttered. It sounds dangerous, Threekes added. It sounds necessary, Zorvan said quietly. All eyes turned to him. The Empire has been stable for millennia. But stability isn't the same as permanence. The universe changes. Threats evolve. The Kreshner are proof of that. We need members who understand transformation from experience, not just theory. So you're in favor of accepting them? Yelrix asked. I'm in favor of accepting that we need them, Zorvan corrected. Whether we accept humanity into the Empire is a different question. One I'm not yet ready to answer. Then what do you propose? Silthra asked. Zorvan stood, his movement carrying the weight of millennia. We give them a real choice. Not a test disguised as an opportunity, but an honest look at what membership means. Let Kiran Voss see the full reality of the Empire, the good and the terrible. Then ask humanity if they still want to join. If they do, understanding the true cost, then we'll have our answer. And if they decline? Drelix asked. Then they're wiser than we gave them credit for, Zorvan replied. And we'll reconsider what the Empire has become that makes wisdom look like refusal. The council voted. 12 in favor, 5 opposed. Kiran was summoned immediately. The truth. Kiran entered the strategic chamber expecting formal proceedings. Instead, he found only Zorvan and Yelrix waiting. Ambassador Voss, Zorvan gestured to a seat. We need to have an honest conversation. Something in the High Arbiter's tone made Kiran's stomach clench. About my petition? About what your petition really means. Zorvan activated a holographic display. An image appeared, a beautiful planet with azure oceans and green continents. This is Threxia. It was home to the Threxian people, a species that joined the Empire 1100 years ago. Kiran noticed the past tense. The Threxians were innovative, curious, much like humanity. They made significant contributions to imperial science and culture. The image shifted, showing bustling cities, gleaming spires, beings that looked like upright wolves with scaled skin. They were proud of their membership. For 8 centuries they thrived. The image changed again. The cities were ruined, the continents scorched. What happened? Kiran whispered. The Kravik happened, Yelrix said quietly. A militant species from beyond our borders. They saw the Empire as weak, prosperous prey. They launched an invasion that caught us unprepared. The Threxians were on the front line. They fought bravely, but their planet fell before reinforcements could arrive. How many died? 11 billion beings, Zorvan said. An entire civilization, erased in 3 days. Kiran felt sick. Why are you showing me this? Because membership in the Empire isn't just trade agreements and technology exchange, Yelrix explained. It's a mutual defense pact. If a hostile force attacks any member world, all members are obligated to respond. That includes Earth. We have 3 colony ships in construction and barely 500 military vessels, Kiran said slowly, understanding dawning. If something like that happened now, Earth would be expected to contribute to the defense, Zorvan confirmed. Your 500 ships against fleets numbering in the tens of thousands. Your 3 colonies against civilizations spanning hundreds of systems. That's suicide. That's membership, Yelrix said bluntly. The Empire has been at peace for centuries, but peace is maintained through strength and unity. Every member contributes according to their capability. For some species, that means technology. For others, resources. For humanity, it would mean being willing to stand in harm's way long before you're truly ready to. Kiran stared at the image of destroyed Threxia. Does this happen often? No, Zorvan admitted. Major conflicts occur every few centuries. Minor skirmishes every few decades. Most members never see direct combat. But the possibility always exists. And when it does, the obligation is absolute. You're trying to scare me away. We're trying to give you the truth, Yelrix corrected. Most species that petition for membership see only the benefits. Advanced technology, galactic trade networks, cultural exchange, protection under imperial law. All of that is real. But so is this. She gestured at the ruined world. Zorvan changed the image. Now it showed a massive space station, scarred and pitted but still functional. This is Defense Station Meridian. It guards the approach to 12 inhabited systems. 200 years ago, it held against a Kreshner assault for 17 days while reinforcements arrived. 40,000 beings died defending it. Among them were Vorium, Kresh, Drelix, and 16 other species. They died protecting worlds they'd never visited, for people they'd never met. Because they were all Empire, Kiran said quietly. Yes. Zorvan's ancient eyes bore into him. That's what membership means. Not just receiving protection but providing it. Not just benefiting from unity but sacrificing for it. Can humanity make that commitment? Kieran thought about Earth. About the billions of people who had voted to reach for the stars with hope and excitement. They imagined alien friends, incredible technologies, adventures among distant worlds. They didn't imagine their children dying in defense of planets whose names they couldn't pronounce. I need to tell them, he said. My people need to know what they're actually choosing. That's why we're showing you, Yelric said. The Council has voted to continue deliberations on humanity's petition. But we're also giving you the opportunity to withdraw it. No shame, no penalty. Simply an acknowledgement that humanity isn't ready for what the Empire requires. Or, Zorvan added, you return to Earth, share this reality with your people and let them decide. If humanity still chooses membership, understanding the full cost, then the Council will give your petition genuine consideration. Kieran stood. How long do I have? As long as you need, Zorvan replied. But understand this, the galaxy doesn't wait. The threats that destroyed Threxia still exist. The Kreshner still raid our borders. If humanity joins the Empire and war comes tomorrow, you'll be expected to stand with us tomorrow. Even though we're not ready? No one is ever ready for war, Yelric said softly. But some choose to stand anyway. That's what we need to know about humanity. Will you stand even when you're not ready? Kieran left the chamber with his head spinning. Zelthi found him an hour later, sitting in the gardens, staring at nothing. Bad news? She asked gently. Complicated news. He looked up at her. They showed me what joining the Empire really costs. Ah. Her wings shifted to a somber gray. They showed you Threxia. You knew. Everyone knows. It's the story they tell every species that gets too excited about membership. She settled beside him. Did they also tell you about Helix Station? The one that held against the Kreshner for 17 days? They tell that story differently depending on the audience, Zelthi said. What they don't usually mention is that the defense coordinator was a Vorium engineer named Silthex who had been with the Empire for only 3 years. Her species was barely more advanced than yours when they joined. She wasn't supposed to be ready. But when the attack came, she held the line anyway. Did she survive? Yes, actually. She's now an admiral. I met her once at a ceremony. Do you know what she told me? Zelthi's antennae twitched with the memory. She said the scariest part wasn't the battle. It was making the choice to stay when she could have run. But she stayed because that's what being part of something larger meant. Kieran absorbed that. The Council thinks I'll recommend withdrawal. Will you? I think I'll recommend honesty. He stood up. Can you get me a message to Earth? Priority transmission. Of course. What are you going to tell them? The truth. All of it. And then I'm going to let humanity decide what kind of species we want to be. Humanity's answer. The transmission reached Earth 3 days later. Kieran had spent those days crafting his message carefully, knowing that billions would watch, that governments would analyze every word, that humanity's future would pivot on what he said. He stood in a recording chamber, facing a camera that would beam his words across light years. Behind him, the vista of the imperial capital spread out through massive windows, a reminder of what was at stake. People of Earth, he began. I speak to you from the heart of the Interstellar Empire, and I need to tell you something that will change everything you thought about joining galactic civilization. For 20 minutes he laid out the reality. The Threxian genocide. The defense obligations. The certainty that humanity would be expected to fight and die for worlds they'd never seen. He held nothing back, showed every horrifying image the Council had shared with him. The Empire isn't a federation of equals trading technology and culture, he said quietly. It's a family that bleeds together. And they're asking if humanity is ready to join that family, knowing we'll be expected to bleed too. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I can't answer that question. No ambassador can. Only you can decide what humanity should be. So I'm asking you to vote again. Not on whether joining sounds exciting or beneficial, but on whether you're willing to stand in defense of beings you've never met, to sacrifice for principles that extend beyond our planet, to be part of something so much larger than ourselves that it's terrifying. The Council has given us time to decide. I'll wait here for your answer, whatever it is. No shame in choosing safety. No dishonor in admitting we're not ready. But if we choose to continue this petition, we do so with open eyes and the full knowledge of what we're promising. He stepped closer to the camera. Think carefully. Vote honestly. And know that whatever humanity decides, I'm proud to represent you. The transmission ended. Now came the hardest part, waiting. On Earth, the message sparked the most intense global discussion in human history. Town halls in every city. Debates in every language. Families arguing across dinner tables. Students protesting in streets. Religious leaders, scientists, soldiers, teachers all weighing in with their perspectives. Some argued for acceptance. This is what it means to matter, a veteran from New Delhi declared. To be part of something worth defending, worth dying for. Our ancestors fought for ideals. Why shouldn't we? Others urged rejection. We've barely stopped killing each other, a mother from Sao Paulo pleaded. How can we promise to die for aliens when we just learned to live with our neighbors? The debates raged for 2 weeks. In the imperial capital, Kiran watched humanity grapple with the hardest choice they'd ever faced. Zelthi kept him company along with an unexpected visitor. Admiral Silthex, the Vorium engineer who had defended Helix Station, requested a meeting. Kiran found himself sitting across from a being who looked like a giant mantis in a military uniform. Your species is struggling with this decision, she observed, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Wouldn't yours? We did. When the council showed us the cost of membership, half our population voted to decline. The debate nearly tore our unity apart. She leaned forward. But then someone asked a different question. Not, are we ready to die for strangers? But, what kind of species do we want to be? And what did you decide? That being safe was less important than being significant. That hiding behind our own borders was survival, but standing with the galaxy was living. Her multifaceted eyes reflected Kiran's image 100 times over. We knew we weren't ready. We joined anyway. And yes, some of us died. But we also became something greater than we could have been alone. Do you regret it? Silthex was quiet for a long moment. I regret every life lost. I mourn the beings who died under my command at Helix Station. But I don't regret the choice that put me there. Because the alternative was letting millions die while we stayed safe. That's not a species I wanted to be part of. After she left, Kiran found Zorvan in the gardens, tending to crystalline flowers that chimed softly in the wind. Admiral Silthex visited me, Kiran said. She visits every ambassador who faces this choice, Zorvan replied, not looking up from his gardening. She believes new members should hear from someone who lived the reality, not just old council members who send others to fight. Is that why you showed me Threxia? To scare humanity away. I showed you Threxia because I needed you to understand what you were asking for. Zorvan finally looked at Kiran. Every species that joins the Empire thinks they understand the cost. They see it intellectually. But they don't feel it until the attack comes, until their people are dying, until they're making the choice Silthex made. I wanted humanity to feel it before that moment arrives. That's cruel. Perhaps. But it's also honest. Zorvan returned to his flowers. The Empire has lasted 4 millennia because we don't lie to ourselves about what we are. We're not a peaceful union. We're a civilization that chose survival through unity, knowing that unity requires sacrifice. The crystalline flowers chimed a complex pattern. Zorvan listened, then smiled slightly. These flowers were brought from Threxia before it fell. They nearly went extinct, but we preserved them. Every world in the Empire has a garden with these flowers now. A reminder of what we fight to protect and what we've already lost. Kiran touched one of the flowers gently. It chimed at his touch, a haunting sound that seemed to carry echoes of a dead world. The vote results come in tomorrow, he said quietly. I know. Zorvan stood, brushing dirt from his robes. Whatever humanity decides, Ambassador Voss, know that you've represented your species with honor. That matters more than you might think. The next morning, Kiran stood before the Grand Assembly Hall as the results arrived. The council had gathered, along with ambassadors from dozens of species. Everyone wanted to see what the humans would choose. Kiran activated the data display with shaking hands. The vote results filled the holographic space. 15 billion humans had voted. The participation rate was 98%, higher than any previous global referendum. The arguments had been fierce, the debates passionate. Every perspective had been heard. The final result, 71% in favor of continuing the petition for membership. Not unanimous, not even overwhelming by previous standards. But a clear majority of humanity had chosen to stand with the galaxy, knowing the cost. Kiran looked up at the assembled council. The people of Earth have voted to continue our petition for membership in the Interstellar Empire. We understand the obligations. We accept the risks. We ask not for special treatment or extended preparation time. If we are accepted, we'll stand with the Empire from day one, ready or not. He took a breath. But we also ask for honesty in return. Don't accept us because you pity us or because you need bodies for your borders. Accept us only if you believe humanity can contribute something meaningful to the Empire. Because we're not doing this just to join something. We're doing this to become something. Silence filled the hall. Then Zorvan stood. The council will now vote on humanity's petition for membership. All in favor? One by one, platforms illuminated. Yelrix first, her ancient face showing satisfaction. Then Drelix, his gaseous form swirling with approval. Fira's aquatic tank glowed. Kresh's crystalline structure pulsed with light. Even Threekey's, after a long hesitation, activated his platform's acceptance signal. 17 species. 17 votes. 17 in favor. Unanimous. The motion passes, Zorvan declared, his voice carrying across the chamber and out to the galaxy beyond. Humanity is hereby accepted as a provisional member of the Interstellar Empire. Full membership will be granted after a transition period of 10 standard years, during which Earth will have all rights and responsibilities of membership. Kieran felt his knees weaken. They'd done it. Humanity had joined the stars. But Zorvan wasn't finished. Ambassador Voss approached. Kieran walked to the central platform on unsteady legs. You asked us not to accept humanity out of pity, Zorvan said. So let me tell you why we voted in your favor. Not because you're technologically advanced. You're not. Not because you're militarily powerful. You're not. Not because you'll immediately strengthen the Empire. You won't. He gestured around the chamber. We accepted you because when faced with the hardest truth of membership, 71% of your species chose courage over safety. Because you've demonstrated the one quality that no amount of time or technology can teach, the willingness to stand for something larger than yourselves. Yelrix stepped forward. The Empire needs that. We've been stable for so long that we've forgotten what it means to choose growth over comfort. Your species remembers. That's what you bring to us. But understand, Threekey's added, his tone stern, this isn't a symbolic gesture. The next time the Kreshner attack, humanity fights. The next time a member world faces disaster, Earth responds. You wanted to be part of something. Now you are. With all that entails. Kieran nodded. We understand. And we're ready. No, you're not, Silthra said, but her tone was almost gentle. But you've chosen to stand anyway. That's what matters. The ceremony concluded with formal documentation, official seals, and a dozen procedural requirements. But Kieran barely processed any of it. His mind was already racing ahead to everything that would happen next. Technology transfers. Cultural exchange programs. Military coordination. Trade agreements. Defense preparations. Earth was about to change more in the next 10 years than it had in the previous 1,000. Later, as Kieran prepared the transmission that would carry the news home, Zelthi found him in the gardens one last time. You did it, she said, her wings shimmering with colors Kieran had learned meant genuine happiness. We did it, he corrected. Humanity did it. I just asked the questions. And gave them the truth. That took courage. Speaking of courage, Kieran said, what happens now? The council mentioned provisional membership and transition periods. What does that actually mean? Zelthi's antennae twitched with what might have been amusement. It means the real work begins. Someone has to coordinate technology transfers, establish diplomatic protocols, train Earth's representatives in imperial law, set up defense coordination. It's going to be chaos for years. And who handles all that? Usually the ambassador who successfully petitioned for membership. It's tradition. She looked at him with those multifaceted eyes. Congratulations, Ambassador Voss. You're about to become the busiest human in the galaxy. Kieran laughed despite himself. Then he looked up at the alien sky, thinking about Earth and all the people there who had voted to reach beyond their world. They'd chosen to be part of something larger, knowing the cost. Now came the real challenge, making sure that choice meant something. But as he stood in the gardens of an alien world, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, Kieran felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Not naive hope that everything would be easy. Not blind hope that humanity was ready for what was coming. But the kind of hope that came from knowing that billions of people had looked at the darkness between the stars and chosen to bring their light to it anyway. Zelthi, he said, how long until the first defense coordination meeting? 3 days. Why? Because I have a lot of reading to do. If humanity's going to stand with the Empire, we're going to do it right. She settled on his shoulder, her wings reflecting the light of distant stars. You know what the best part about humanity is? What's that? You're not ready. You're not prepared. You're going to make mistakes and stumble and probably cause several diplomatic incidents. Her colors shifted to warm amber. But you're going to try anyway. And somehow that's exactly what the Empire needed. Kieran smiled. Then I guess it's a good thing we showed up. Above them, a ship lifted off from the capital, carrying the official news to Earth. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They were part of something ancient, vast, and occasionally terrifying. But they were part of it together. And that made all the difference.